To begin the meeting, we're going to turn everything over to our county manager, Dudley Watts, who will take us through a 19-item agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon again. So we do not have any discussion items per se. We don't have any closed session items, so it's just a matter of working our way through the items to introduce for the November 4th meeting. And Vice Chairman Martin just mentioned to me the turkey shoot was carried over to the 4th. We didn't have it on this agenda, but I guess we're waiting for it to bubble back up through planning. But anyway, if I get Chris Murphy up, the first item on the agenda is his. It's a public hearing on a site plan amendment of BROOKBERRY Farm. But if you can mention the turkey shoot real quick.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dudley. Yeah, on the turkey shoot, we have gotten a compromise proposal from the petitioner, Ed Nichols, and we have sent that information to Mr. Tommy Sales and the Walkertown Civic Club, and we heard back from Walkertown Civic Club, basically thanks for the information, because most of the compromise centers around the specific turkey shoot on High Point Road, and it was allowing them to continue that for a couple years while they look to move to another location. So anyway, we've sent that. We haven't heard back from Mr. Sales at this point, but we anticipate hearing back from early next week, and then what we'll do is we'll report back at briefing next week, and then we'll just basically present their proposals to the commissioners, and you can make a decision.
That in itself is good news, just that they're talking and willing to make an agreement.
Well, I wouldn't say they're talking. I would say they're communicating through us. But,
that's good. You're even better.
Right, and I don't see us being able to probably broker a peace treaty talk at a table, but again, I think we can probably see if we can find any reasonable compromise in between with their respective proposals.
Got it.
With that, I'm not sure if you want to, I'll introduce F-1608. It's a request by BROOKBERRY Farm LLC, Berkley von FEILITZSCH, and HERIBERT von FEILITZSCH, and I'm sure I'm butchering that, but we'll go with that. The site is a 212-acre parcel of part of the original BROOKBERRY Farm development. It's located west of BROOKBERRY Farm Circle, east of Kettner Road, and south of Cedar Mere Drive. And the request is proposing modifications to the illustrative master plan and development conditions for the original BROOKBERRY Farm approval that the commissioners approved back in November of 2003. This is the subject property shown on the Legacy Growth Management Plan. It's located in the Suburban Neighborhoods Growth Management Area 3 off of Meadowlark Drive in between Country Club Shallowford and Robin Hood. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow. You can see it's zoned MUS. It's just to the west of the Beltway and located north of Covington Place, and it is on the west side of Meadowlark Drive, and the intervening area zoned MUS between Meadowlark and the subject property is the larger BROOKBERRY Farms development. Again, that was approved by the commissioners back in 2003. This is the subject property shown on the countywide aerial images. This was part of the active farm that was part of BROOKBERRY Farms back when it was owned by the Gray family. This image is taken from Maple Chase Road. The site is in the background off the image where the road kind of ends. This is taken from Hilly Creek Lane, which is in the Covington Place project. The site is in the background. Hilly Creek Lane, you'll see the zoning sign there at the terminus of this road. Hilly Creek Lane was or is in Covington Place, and Covington Place was approved after BROOKBERRY, so this road was constructed to tie into the street in BROOKBERRY. Of course, BROOKBERRY was just a much larger project, and it's taken them 17 or 18 years to get to this phase. And this road is was proposed on the original plan and is proposed on the revised master plan to continue as a through street. This is the subject property shown on the area plan map for the West Suburban Area Plan. It's identified as residential. This is an MUS project, but the majority of the Brookberry project on the west side of Meadowlark Drive is exclusively residential. This is an image showing the master plan approved in 2003 on the left and contrasting that with the proposed master plan as part of F-1608. The general layout is the same. The basic connections and streets are the same. There are probably a couple more cul-de-sacs in the proposal than in the original master plan layout. One of the reasons why they're bringing this change through is that the lot width in the proposal is a little more narrow, and that deals with a specific condition of approval for this land bay related to the number of front-loaded garages that would be eligible. There was a limit in the number of front-loaded garages by land bay in the original master plan, and as part of this proposal, they are proposing to eliminate that condition of approval for limiting those front-loaded garages. This is Covington Place, the entrance onto Shallowford Road. So you would go in off of Shallowford and take a number of turns before you would get into Brookberry. The proposed or the Brookberry development obviously has several means of ingress and egress off of Meadowlark and lots of interconnectivity within the project. But as part of the UDO, there is a requirement for different subdivisions to connect into each other as long as there isn't a topographic constraint that would prevent such interconnectedness. This is Covington Place. Again, Shallowford Road. Those blue dots are meant to represent the intersections that you would have to actually turn to get from Shallowford Road into Brookberry and vice versa from Brookberry back out to Shallowford if folks were looking to make that their route. It would be circuitous.
Good.
Here are the modified conditions for the land bays that I mentioned earlier. You'll note that, again, it had a maximum of 10% of the residential units shall have garages which open toward the front yard. That condition is proposed to be eliminated, both in land bays 2 and 3. There are conditions of approval as part of this project that go in conjunction with the original conditions of approval for Brookberry that will also carry forward. Developer shall dedicate a 40-foot wide greenway easement to the city of Winston or Forsyth County through a recorded plat along Reynolds Creek between the proposed loop road and the proposed right-of-way to the northern beltway. And the developer shall dedicate a 40-foot wide greenway easement along Tomahawk Creek following the eastern boundary of Land Bay 2 and 3 to terminate the proposed loop road. This greenway shall be dedicated to the city of Winston-Salem or Forsyth County through a recorded plat. And that's just so we continue the proposed greenway in that area consistent with the greenway master plan that's been adopted. F-1608, the summary. This proposal keeps the project consistent with low-density residential land use recommended in the West Suburban Area Plan update. This should not impact the trip generation for the site as the number of units are comparable. Staff has no concerns regarding the proposed changes to the conditions. The street connection between Brookberry and Covington Place is a requirement of the UDO. The Covington connection actually was built to connect into the street shown on the Brookberry plan, which was approved first, but as a much larger project took longer to construct. The reason why I did highlight the Covington Place project is this was heard at the planning board meeting of September 9th. There were a number of speakers in opposition, but the opposition was exclusively requesting that the ordinance required connection between Covington Place subdivision and Brookberry Farms be eliminated. The planning board heard those concerns, but voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request because it's consistent with the plan, and that was keeping that connection in there. And with that, the site plan does meet UDO requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Did you say that traffic pattern kept people from one road or whatever into Brookberry or out of Brookberry?
There are a number of interconnections within Brookberry that get you back out to Meadowlark. There are also connections that go further to the north in the West Edge development that we discussed earlier. Without this connection, with this connection, you would be able to theoretically go from Shallowford Country Club all the way to Robin Hood without traversing Meadowlark. Now, it would take you a number of turns to do that, and I wouldn't recommend doing it if you were in a hurry. But that contrasts what we have on the east side of Meadowlark, where almost none of those neighborhoods are interconnected. So everyone has to get out of their neighborhood onto Meadowlark to either go north to Robin Hood or south to Country Club, which is why we have such a congestion problem on Meadowlark currently. The other issue that we have is none of those neighborhoods connect back to the west.
There you go.
Excuse me, the east across Muddy Creek. I believe that's Muddy Creek.
And that's what the planning board voted in favor of, and you kind of helped them through there, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Good. For any questions?
Yeah, I like the plan. Tell me where Kester Mill Road, is it Kester Mill or the road? Kettner Road.
Kettner.
How close is that to this development, or is it in it?
It's not in this development. It is just to the east of this just to the west of this development on the other side of the Beltway. If you were on Shallowford, and
That's a road we used to take into Brookberry, or into the Gray Estate.
that's the road that used to go to the Gray Estate,
Right.
correct? And
that's
there is
not in-
there is a stub road that's shown going under the Beltway to another land bay for the Brookberry development that's on the west side of the Beltway.
Okay, well, they're getting close.
Aren't you glad you asked that question?
Yeah, I'm good.
Any further questions, comments?
So if I saw it, sorry. If I saw it correctly, so the number of homes was not to exceed 380. So that went up from 300 to 380. I think I was on slide 4 or 5 back. And that's what necessitated the narrowing of the lots.
It was a combination of that, a different product type, and the fact that even though they had caps on their land bay, their overall density, they're under, so they're actually putting more units in this phase than they did their other phases. So they're essentially putting 65, 70 more units in here than what was originally proposed, but their overall density is not exceeding what the commissioners approved.
Okay, and I apologize for maybe I just the issue of connecting the new Brookberry through the Covington Place was added back.
It was never removed. It was in the original
That's right, right.
proposal, and it has
so-
never been removed. The folks that showed up in opposition at the planning board meeting, that's what they were in opposition to. They weren't really in opposition to the changes that were being proposed. They just wanted that connection to go away. And the antithesis, or if this were to be denied, the net effect is the connection would still be made because the underlying plan already has that connection shown. They would not be able to do the 380 units, and they would only be able to have 10% front-loaded garages. So denial of this, the connection would still be made because it's shown on the approved plan that we already have.
So it stays connected, I got it. Nothing changed.
Any further questions, comments?
Just one question for clarity, Mr. Chairman. So the opposition was satisfied with the amended master plan and amended conditions?
There was no one spoke on those issues. The only folks that spoke solely on the connection, which again, the connection was there in the original development, and it's there now. Actually, Brookberry was approved before Covington. Covington was approved in 2004, 2005 as a subdivision. It didn't have to be rezoned. It was just approved as a subdivision, and that Hilly Creek Lane, I believe was the name of it, is the road that would actually connect into Brookberry. It was actually shown where it's shown to hook into the road that had already been approved in Brookberry. So their comments were related exclusively to that connection and not wanting that connection.
Okay. So the amended master plan and amended conditions were basically what, in a simple format? What was amended and what was?
The number of units, some of the layout, and then eliminating that condition related to the front-loading garages.
Okay.
I think we got all the questions.
If not, I'll be back here next week.
Okay,
Thank y'all.
thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chris. Item 2 is approval of minutes for the meeting we just had, so they'll be getting prepared. Item 3 is an amendment to the 2020 Housing Grant Project Ordinance, and I believe that Ashley Pendley with Community and Economic Development is going to review this.
Ashley Finley.
We have a lot of Ashleys.
It's a good name. Good afternoon. I'd like to present about an amendment to the 2020 Housing Grant Ordinance. In July 2019, Forsyth County's Community and Economic Development Department was awarded funds through NCHFA, North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, to administer the 2019 ESFR program. That stands for Essential Single Family Rehabilitation, and that's to provide services to homeowners in the county with a variety of housing repair needs. The allocation was $190,000, and that was to service 5 homes in the county. Additional funding is also available through NCHFA if we complete 5 units or more with that original commitment. So far, we have completed 2 units totaling $62,850. 4 additional houses are approved and underway in some form or fashion. And we have 3 more anticipated units that we plan to service before the end of the year. So our proposal is to, in order to prepare for that, the department is amending the GPO to increase the budget by $155,000. So from that $190,000 initial allocation to $345,000. And so both revenues and appropriations would be increased in equal amounts. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments?
Yes.
Good, oh, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, Ashley. So I do have a question that may be far-reaching.
Okay.
So I was thinking that when individuals have difficulties with their houses, and it's kind of under the auspices of the tax office, is there a community outreach person that connects with this department if they need some assistance?
Sure. So our department does have relationships with the tax department. We have had communications back and forth. So if there were a situation like that where they shared with the tax department that there is a need, they can certainly refer us over, and we can talk through some initial eligibility questions and then get an application started.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions or comments?
One question, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
please. Ashley, this is a out-of-the-box question as well.
Okay.
There's a huge elephant downtown called Crystal Towers with about 200 residents in it. Has there been any discussion of what's going on down there with your department at all?
I can look into it. I don't know what the activity is at the moment. This program was specifically for single-family homeowners, but I can definitely look into that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ashley. All right, Kyle Haney's going to make his way up. He's got 2 items, items 4 and 5. They're both grant matters. Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the execution of necessary documents to provide up to $300,000 to S.G. Atkins Community Development Corporation if it is awarded a U.S. Economic Development Administration grant to expand a shared-use kitchen at Enterprise Center. Kyle.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Like the manager said, this item before you is in response to a request from S.G. Atkins Community Development Corporation for some financial assistance to serve as a local match that would be required to apply for a U.S. Economic Development Administration grant that would be able to expand their shared-use kitchen facilities at the Enterprise Center. S.G. Atkins has operated the shared-use kitchen facility since 2018. What this does is provides commercial kitchen equipment and commercial equipment space to entrepreneurs at a low cost, as well as providing business and technical assistance, really to serve the mission of SG Atkins, which is to provide economic opportunity for low and moderate income individuals in the neighborhoods around Winston-Salem State. With the current facility, which is about 900 square feet, they're only able to have 5 different entrepreneurs or businesses in that facility. Those current 5 actually have created about 18 full-time or part-time positions. And it is actually one of only 3 nonprofit shared use kitchens in the state as well. And there is a wait list of about 40 people, 40 businesses or entrepreneurs who would like to use this facility, but at the current time could not because of the space. So SG Atkins has been in conversation with the U.S. Economic Development Administration about funding to expand this facility for some time. Through that, they engaged an architect and had a plan drawn up that would expand it by about 4,000 square feet. And that would allow an additional 25 entrepreneurs to be able to use that space. It would also allow additional packaging of food as well. So right now, most of the people who are coming there are preparing foods for catering or other events. This would allow them to actually have people come in, and so if you were selling pickles or popcorn, they would be able to package that as well. The expected cost of that is about $1.3 million. And I had conversations with the EDA administrator for this region as well. It is a very competitive project, and she actually told me that she would be excited about it and would advocate for this to get funding. The grant actually, it requires a local match of at least 20% of the total project amount. SG Atkins did request $300,000 as part of the Forsyth County FY 21-22 budget process. At the time, we thought that was a good American Rescue Plan Act project, so we deferred it to that funding process. We later found out that the local American Rescue Plan Act funding cannot be used as a match for US EDA grants. And so SG Atkins did complete a full application for the American Rescue Plan Act budget, but it was in the total amount of the project for $1.3 million. Staff looked for ways that we could leverage some funding that we had for this EDA grant instead of the total 1.3. And the board had set aside $1 million in PAYGO funds a couple years ago for economic development use. And so what this item would do would authorize us to use $300,000 of that $1 million as the local match portion, so the SG Atkins can apply for this grant, and if they receive it, then we would be able to use that to contribute as the local match. Carol Davis, who's the executive director of SG Atkins, is here. I'm happy to answer any questions, but there may be some technical questions that she can address as well.
Questions for Kyle? Comments?
Kyle, my only question that I have for you is with the grant, do you know when maybe I missed it, when we should get a response back?
So it's a rolling grant, so we won't have an exact date, but I would guess 90 days, 90 to 120 days, 3 to 4 months.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Okay, thank you, Kyle.
All right.
So I wanted to acknowledge Carol Davis. Ms. Davis, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Not unless you have some questions.
I don't, but thank you for being here.
Very good. Item 5 is also Kyle's. It's a resolution authorizing acceptance of a FY21 Historic Preservation Fund grant for the rehabilitation of Corners Folly Summer Kitchen. Turn it over to Kyle.
Kerner's Folly.
Kerner's Folly. Sorry.
I was corrected about that as well, so I'm going to get that right today. So essentially what this is a pass-through grant that would be administered by the county. The Forsyth County Historic Resources Commission worked with Kerner's Folly to submit an application for the FY 2021 Historic Preservation Fund to rehabilitate the Kerner's Folly Summer Kitchen. And they were notified that they received this award in an amount of $20,000. However, the award has to go through a certified local government. We are a certified local government, so they asked if we would administer this. And the grant does require a 1-to-1 local match. Kerner's Folly has received commitments from 2 local individuals in the Kernersville area to provide that. So essentially what we would be doing is we would be administering this contract. We would receive all of the grant funds, half of that from Kerner's Folly, and then half of that on the back end from this grant. So it's a $40,000 project. This will allow us to accept those as well as amend the budget to increase, to accept those.
You know, that's not a lot of money when you stop and think of what Kerner's Folly really means to that community. It's the face of the community. And to put this into it doesn't seem like enough money to take care of the kitchen. They need more money than that, but I'm just saying. That's good.
You don't live in Kernersville, do you?
No, I would not have yes, I would have an interest in it, but not financial, I can tell you that. Anybody have a question? Richard, any comments? Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks, Kyle.
All right. Item 6 is we dealt with last Thursday. It's a resolution accepting the donation of the Savoia Marchetti if you say that right, S-56 aircraft from Reynolda House and authorizing the payment of transportation costs. Mark Davidson reviewed it kind of in a briefing session. You can update us and answer any questions we have.
Yeah, and we're getting to the point where it'll be official. So just want to let you know that we're working with Reynolda House as well as the county attorney's office to finalize a donation agreement. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to approve it.
And that's a good deal, too. Come right down to it.
Yep.
Questions or comments?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right, agenda item 7 is a resolution ratifying and authorizing execution of an amendment to the interlocal agreement between Forsyth County and the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education for the provision of school resource officer deputy positions. Randy Hunsucker, the business officer for the Sheriff's Department, is here to talk about that and the associated budget ordinance amendment.
Thank you, Dudley. And Mr. Chairman, board members, good afternoon. This item before you today is a resolution ratifying and authorizing execution of an amendment to the School Resource Officer SRO interlocal agreement between the Forsyth County, the Sheriff's Office, and the school system. And the amendment adds 5 new SRO positions effective January 1st, 2022. The cost is $212,281. And it will be completely covered by the school system. That includes all salaries, benefits, and direct costs. And as per informal sort of board policy, it does not include any frontline vehicle cost or overhead costs. If approved, the amendment would increase SRO presence that the school system and the Sheriff's Office have agreed upon, and that would include new positions at Reynolds High School, Glenn High School, Mount Tabor High School, Parkland High School, and Paisley Lawrence Middle School. And I also want to let you know that the Board of Education will vote on this item next Thursday, October 28th. And I also wanted to add that as I'm sitting out here today, they're actually wanting to begin earlier, so I may have to amend this item to start earlier than January 1st. There's an agreement that we have to start earlier, perhaps as soon as November 1st, so I just want to give you a heads up on that. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions or comments?
I've got just one. I heard kind of an explanation of these 5 positions as not being per se resource officers, but actually working like in a team and actually visiting schools with a little more specific purpose. And I am one of sort of semantics, and if what I heard and understand is correct, that where they actually work as a team, they would visit within particularly those schools, then I'm probably good. If it's the idea of creating a permanent kind of implied staffing of those 5 schools with one additional resource officer doing the same thing that resource officers are doing now, I'm against it. So I kind of like to know what it is.
Yes, sir. So right now, we're responsible for 25 schools, and we have 29 deputies. So that's we have 4 roving positions that serve as relief after someone's sick, vacation, or busy with something else. So there's essentially, if you exclude the roving positions, there's 1 SRO for each of those 25 schools. So this would make permanent 2 deputies at those schools listed there. So what you're probably referring to is the requested JIT team, the Juvenile Intervention Team.
I think that's maybe what it's called.
No, this is not the JIT team.
Then I'll be voting against it.
Additional comments?
Well, I just would like to say that I applaud the school board for adding more SRO. I mean, if we ever needed them, we need them now. And I think parents will be pleased to know that there's going to be more protection there.
Well, perhaps Randy could also discuss a little bit, is it called the JETS team? Because that explanation, because this is all related to gun violence issues and prevention, which is kind of like what is going to work and make a difference. And I think what these teams are doing, the one that's in action right now, is actually making a difference, and I think that's really positive. And that's a different approach to the problem, and I like that. And I thought that was very good. So why don't you talk about that and who's paying for that now and what is the future of that? And I'm not hearing correctly. Is it JETS? What was it?
Right. So JIIT, the Juvenile Intervention and Investigation Team.
Yes.
It would be non-positions that we're asking for the ARPA funds to help pay for. It would be a 3-year program. This team would work in coordination with the Winston-Salem Police Department, their gang intervention unit. We would operate under an operational and logistical plan, and they would provide us training on gang recognition. We would do joint things together, and that they would work with the schools' SROs for intelligence. There'd be intelligence sharing with the city and the SRO officers, and vice versa. But they'll also work more behind the scenes on intelligence and intervention efforts to keep kids out of gangs, to get juveniles involved in programs so they wouldn't be interested in joining a gang or doing something as a crime. So,
Yeah, which has an identification and prevention aspect to it.
correct.
Which I think is important, and I'm having a hard, if that were able to take place, then I think the idea of having an extra just resource officer doing the same thing is kind of redundant. And that's kind of, and if that's in the ARPA grant and we're not done with that, then maybe,
And the JIT team-
maybe the issue would be one, how do you foresee these 5, would you foresee these 5 continuing forever? Or is this just like a temporary remainder of the year request to the school board?
That's a great question, sir. The JIT team will not operate from the schools, so these will primarily be in the communities.
All right,
There will be
let me back
connection
up,
with the
let me
schools,
back up.
right? So on these 5 positions, we have year-to-year agreements with the school system. So every year we have a conversation with the school system. We get all together and assess the safety and security needs at the moment. So if what happens is what you say, I hope it will, that things calm down. Maybe they would not be permanent. But this is to address the safety and security issues of right now.
Let me ask this question. Do you have one of those JET teams operating now that you all are paying for?
We have reassigned some personnel, temporary basis as best they can to do what we have to do to keep kids safe.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions?
One
comments?
question very quickly.
Sir,
Just to be clear, the school system has agreed to pay for these positions
Yes, 100%.
100%. I have no problem with it.
okay, doke.
Chairman,
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Go ahead, now I got a question.
Yeah, I just have a question relative to, a lot of the emphasis seems as if it's put on the school systems versus the community. So what I would like to know is like what is happening for the community to be safe from the sheriff's department. And definitely it's important, but most of this, again, we will continue to keep saying is spewing from the community into the school systems.
Yes.
So that's the disconnect for me. So if somebody can provide those answers, that would be helpful.
Right, and that would be exactly what the JIT team would help us out, because you're right, exactly. What's happening in our communities is spilling over into the schools. So the JIT team would try to intervene in the community sooner before it reaches the schools.
So what happens, so isn't the daily work or the description of a sheriff and the police department is to protect and serve regardless to this JET team?
So can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, so their job description is to protect and serve the citizens of the county and the city. And this is the sheriff's department and the police department. That's the theme, to protect and serve. So my question is, why is so much emphasis given to the school systems versus the community? That's what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. And it's not a knockdown, it's just that I need them working in those capacities, and you should probably see a reduction of that matriculating in the schools. So you don't have to comment on it. I'm sure that they're listening, so I just wanted to share my sentiments. Thank you.
She gave you a break.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Agenda item 8 is a resolution approving the purchase of replacement computer equipment. MIS and Gary Kuntz will review.
Good afternoon. I appreciate your time. It's been a long day. The item before you is part of our normal budgetary process. We try to budget for up to a 25% replacement on computing endpoints as needed. We don't replace them just because, but we do try to do that so we can have a roughly 4-year replacement cycle for endpoints. These would be considered, I call them like frontline endpoints or PCs, and the ones we replace often do fall into a secondary nature of not assigned to a person, but like kiosk and things like that. So this is the first phase of it. For this year, we've identified 100 replacements that are needed, and we've went out and verified and validated state contract pricing. We did seek out pricing from several vendors. Dell Technologies is the lowest bidder on state contract, so it is my recommendation that we proceed forward with this.
This whole thing's a no-brainer. You need to do it, I would think. Just got to. Questions or
Don't have
comments?
to, but it helps to keep technology up to date.
Well, you pay me now or pay me big time later.
Well, my question is somewhat in that vein, and it really is, and refreshing computers critical. I mean, that's very important. It needs to be done on a regular basis, so it's not a one big deal. But I used to face this issue about what is the cycle, and sometimes it has to do with types of uses, types of whatever. I mean, you can get by with some kind of dumb term. I mean, it just depends what you're doing. And I'm kind of curious if you've ever thought about a differential kind of rotation on refreshing based on use, and even the issue of 4 versus 5 years. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking that, technology, it doesn't seem to be changing at the rate that it used to be in the early days. And I suspect when you retire, 100 computers, they're in pretty good shape, and you don't have use for those 100 somewhere, I don't think. You have some uses, but probably not 100, and that's because I imagine they're all pretty operational, even after 4 years.
So we have about 1,800 computers in our fleet, so 25% rotation is about 400 a year, so this is just one piece to that. To answer your first part of your question, is we do actually look at them from a use standpoint, and we don't buy all PCs or laptops. So we've got a fair amount of our fleet is Chrome-based devices for those locations that need just web-based kind of activities, that we do not buy the same level for everything. This particular request is for 100 laptops that we've identified that do need replacing. It'll be in various parts of the county, but we do try to manage a fleet. Like I said, we don't replace 25% every year. Last year we didn't make that number. We did buy some early on in the pandemic for social services. So this past year, out of our budget process, we didn't replace for 25%.
Yeah, I think the best place to look at what I pay attention to, Commissioner Martin, is what's coming off. What's the condition of what's coming off? Because that gives you some. I mean, if that tells you, looking at that, kind of what the condition, what the necessity was. I mean,
Right.
it's a trick. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
thanks.
not sure I caught the second part of your question.
Well, the second part was more if you thought about a 5-year cycle, and of course, you may actually have that for some of the computers based on your previous answer. You may have 5 years on some
We certainly
desktops.
have machines that are 5, 6, 7 years old. A lot of our public access machines are much older because we consider that more of a secondary use. So the frontline machines get moved out to, like, say, kiosk and public machines and things like that. Although some of our public machines are Chrome-based devices that we do not replace every 4 years. Those actually, we haven't hit a replacement cycle on those because we haven't found them going bad yet. So we're going to use them until we need to replace those. and try to establish a framework from that standpoint. But our PCs, based on the software changes, based on processor speed, memory requirements, and like I said, I'm sure you've heard the buzz, Windows 11 is coming out. So every time Microsoft does something in all brilliance, it costs us money. So we just need resources to run those, and that's kind of what we're looking forward to from these. These certainly are the 4-year-old plus on this particular ask.
Okay, Gary.
Got it, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. All right, Kirby Robinson is going to come up. He's got a couple of items back to back. One of them's a contract matter. One of them is a property matter. Item 9 is a resolution authorizing the use of a fuel credit card program for the purchase of gasoline, diesel, and other designated motor fuels at stations with extensive accessibility. And Kirby, if you can talk a little bit about our cooperative effort with the schools, because the schools will piggyback, I believe, on this. They do not piggyback on
But I'll be happy to talk about it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Right. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman and Board. As our PowerPoint's coming up there, I can do it all. Sorry, I'm flipping through a couple pieces of paper here. All right. As background, the county has piggybacked off a state contract for the use of fuel credit cards since about 2014. We piloted the program of fuel credit cards in 2014. It seemed successful. We really focused on law enforcement and EMS vehicles at that time. Essentially, what a fuel credit card does is allow users to fuel county-owned vehicles at virtually any retail gas station. General Services encourages folks, of course, if you're close by at Liberty Street pumps, fuel with us because bulk gasoline is cheaper. But if you are really outside of a short driving radius, we encourage you to use the retail stations so you're not taking your vehicle out of service and coming back to our pumps. The previous state contract expired in September. It was bid by the state for a new term of October 1, 2021 through September 7th, 2024, and the contract was again awarded to WEX, Inc. As part of that contract, the provider will pay the county a 1.75% volume rebate on all monthly retail transactions, which is up from 1.6% in the previous contract. And on the next slide, just to give you a snapshot of our usage, on average, we purchase 36,000 to 38,000 gallons of fuel at retail stations each month. Our predominant user groups are the Sheriff's Office and EMS. You can see the Sheriff accounts for 65% of our transactions at WEX or retail stations, and EMS is 28%. 7 or 8% of that is the remainder of the fleet. There really are a couple benefits to using fuel credit cards. Again, your vehicle stays in service longer, so you don't have to drive back to the county pumps. Statistics show that most of our vehicles are typically within 2 miles of a service station. Decreased wear and tear on the vehicle because you're not driving back. There's quicker refueling time. And also, to talk a little bit about what the manager was referencing, the school system fuels on county pumps. So when we talk about bulk fuel, that's county fuel in the ground at fleet. And so that's what the school system's using. This actually is a really important thing because we have four unleaded pumps at fleet. We just added 140 school system vehicles to that, so we essentially doubled our usage of fleet pumps. So by really allowing the Sheriff's Office and EMS and really the bulk of our white fleet to fuel out at retail stations, we're alleviating a lot of potential congestion at the Linville complex. So the school system fleet, they maintain their own fuel credit card program, is my understanding. It's a possible future opportunity to look at because there are sometimes larger rebates for more fuel. There is decreased maintenance costs, of course, associated with operating our pumps. The less we use them, the less it costs to maintain them. And then there's really an increased ability to maintain a strategic fuel reserve in the times of uncertainty or decreased supply. We try to keep 10,000 gallons of unleaded fuel in the ground at fleet that we can designate to emergencies. So we can run ambulances and pursuit vehicles if we have to. So this resolution essentially authorizes the manager to pay WEX Inc. invoices for fuel in varying amounts up to $1.5 million each fiscal year through the term of the state contract. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Questions, comments?
Just one. My memory of the fuel man cards at the school district, I don't know if they still use fuel man or not, if that's the carrier or whatever, but I very well could be incorrect, but it's my belief that when you use that card, you basically didn't pay state sales tax on it.
Federal or state, yes, sir.
Federal
So-
state sales tax. And look, and that, surely that amounts to more than 1.73% of this return. I mean, of what you're talking about on the WEX deal.
My understanding is, so what they do so essentially, at the pump, you see the cost of the pump like any other user would.
Right.
When we get our bill, they're going to back out taxes and then add a rebate to
Okay,
that.
so it's the taxes plus the rebate.
That's right. So
Taxes plus.
we look at the net cost of fuel. If you go and fuel at the pump right now, you're going to pay whatever it is, some crazy amount over $2. We're going to take off tax of that. Our cost at the pump right now is $2.44 a gallon, and that's typically with tax. So over fiscal '21, we back all that out. Our average cost at retail pumps is $1.76.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, prior to having this service available, because this is more costly than fueling at our tank, but we were having, in order to fuel up, you had to drive all the way across county, especially for a law enforcement vehicle and what have you, just to fuel up. And so your savings didn't make any sense.
And we recreated actually a study that we did when we piloted this program to make sure this was still a cost-effective solution. And just to give you in a nutshell, we studied 23 sheriff's office vehicles. And essentially over the course of a year, it cost us $66,000 to fuel those vehicles at retail pumps. When you factor in what it would have cost us on our pumps, plus the travel time on that, it was actually just $2,000 more at a retail station, right? And so that doesn't account for the deputy's time and all those other great things that go with that. So it actually is, from a total perspective, very effective.
I agree.
Thanks, Kirby.
Yes,
I
sir.
had one question, Kirby.
Yes,
Just
sir.
for historical references, how much we pay on fuel last year and the year before?
Just from a total perspective,
right.
we spent $935,000 on fuel last year. So we're battling two issues this year. One, the cost of fuel is going up, and our usage is going up. We're using about 2,000 gallons more a month right now than we were last year. Our breakdown of that for retail and bulk is 70-80% retail. The rest are going to be on our pumps. So we budgeted almost $1.4 million this year for fuel. That's because we added 140 vehicles from the school system fleet. So you're going to see a big jump in our number this year, but it's essentially, you're not going to see, so it's because of the school system fuel, essentially, and they're obviously reimbursing the county for that.
Thank you.
Additional comments? Okay.
All right. Item 10 is also Kirby's. It's a resolution authorizing publication of an offer to purchase county-owned real property by negotiated offer, advertisement, upset bid.
All right, thank you, sir. So at the board's March 4th meeting, you authorized the county manager to make the Old Clemens Library available for sale and directed him to solicit fair market value offers for that property. So really, that's been on the market since March. To advertise the property, we put a physical sign on it. We sent notice to the local Realtors Association, and a flyer was posted on the county's website along with commercial realty sites. As a facility, it was constructed in 1983. It's a little over 1 acre, a little over 8,100 gross square feet. So the board has received an offer to purchase that property from the Old Clemens School Library Properties LLC, which is essentially our neighbor to the east, Mr. Broyhill. That offer is for $715,000 as is. The intended use of the buyer is professional educational classes, seminars, and conferences in Class A office space. So that appears to be compatible with the facility's current zoning, so there's no needed rezoning there. The property's tax value is a little over $787,000. But what that value does not contemplate, and when we put the facility on the market, this was just happening, one of the mechanical systems in the facility has failed and needs a full replacement. So that value, that $787, doesn't contemplate that replacement. But also, one thing we've learned from the market over the last several months is the cost of the easements that are on the property. And you see that on the aerial in front of you. The areas shaded in red are easements held by the previous owner, the grantor in that respect. The one on the left is for ingress and egress, really over what is called a service road, or what it's referred to as a service road there. On the right are the easements that are sort of been given some folks some concern when they've looked at their property. They're related to parking. So essentially, our neighbor to the east holds an easement over our parking there, which allows their tenants to use the county parking lot. So they can park anywhere in that red box. And then if it becomes a concern or is, there's too much need there, we can confine them to the east of the sort of bolded line into those 15 spaces. So that easement has cost us, I think, a little bit of money in this sale process because it really takes away from your ratio of parking to square footage. So if approved, the offer will be advertised, obviously, for the 10-day upset bid period. And the board will have the opportunity to review the last and highest offer, and you, of course, may reject any and all offers at any time. And I'll just sort of note that any subsequent bid would need to represent the net cash payment to the county. Sometimes when you get these commercial properties, folks will be represented by a broker. They would need to offer what would be our payment at closing. And they need to declare their intended use of the property for your consideration. And I'm happy to answer any questions or address any concerns the board may have.
Questions, comments, solutions? I don't think we have any. You did a good job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kirby. Agenda item 11 is also a property matter, and Chelsea Swaim's going to review this, and she's on her way up. It is a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement between Forsyth County and Partners Health Management for lease of county-owned property located at 650 North Highland Avenue. Chelsea.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As the manager just stated, this is to authorize the execution of a lease agreement with Partners, which will soon be our new LME MCO. And this is for 4,891 square feet at the Highland Avenue Center. And this is the space that Cardinal Innovations previously occupied. It's for a 3-year term beginning November 1st of this year and ending October 31st of 2024. It would be at a rental rate of $5.44 per square foot, and that really just covers our operating expenses for this space. And there would be a 3% increase each year included in this. The county would provide building maintenance services, however, Partners would provide the janitorial services to that suite. And this is just for them to provide and administer the publicly funded health services programs for mental health, behavioral health, and substance abuse. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments?
I would just add to this, it has long been our sort of direction from the board, and it really goes back to before the MCO days, when LMEs were essentially public or local entities. We've always leased to the LME or MCO just really at our cost, and so if that rate seems low, it's because it is, and it's because really as a matter of board policy in the past, we've viewed that as a county function and really just covered the cost on that just for the management entity, not if we lease space to a provider, implicit in their rates are a full cost recovery type setup. But anyway, so there is kind of support for the LME, MCO in this, and then not the least of which in this particular issue, that property was, built by the LME, MCO and then transferred to us in the mix. So.
Any comments?
All right. Thank you, Chelsea. Great job. Yep. Item 12 is also a property matter. It's a resolution authorizing execution of a lease agreement between Forsyth County and Gassy Tees LLC, doing business as Soft Golf for lease of county-owned property at Tanglewood Park. Mike Anderson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This agreement is a lease renewal with Gassy Tees LLC, which are doing business as Soft Golf at Tanglewood Park. They've been renting that space for the last several years. It's approximately 6.6 acres of Tanglewood Park, which is adjacent to the dog park out at Tanglewood. It is, again, for the soft golf operations. Our fee is $750 a month that we charge them in rental, plus we get 15% of any gross revenue over $60,000. And so this lease is for a 3-year lease starting this coming April through the end of October. It's a yearly race, and that's the period that they rent, and the lease goes from 2022 to 2024. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, comments? Thanks, Mike.
Very good. All right, we'll wrap it up. Item 13 is resolution approving refunds by the tax assessor and collector amount of $1,128.49. I don't believe John's here, but if you've got questions, you can get with him. And then item 14, liquidity services operations sold asset report. We like to report to you the results of these personal property auctions so you can see what our stuff sold at online auction. And then you've got the reports, the other reports there as well. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that is it for the briefing.
Gosh, you did well. Commissioners, any comments before we adjourn for the day?
Chairman, if I may, I just wanted to wish the Winston-Salem State University a happy homecoming and Ramley reunion. Thank you.
I'd like one comment.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank Chantel Robinson and all the folks from the county who worked on the Fun Fest. That was a big production, and I really appreciated all that hard work, and I thought it went really well. As I sent Chantel an email, exceeded expectations, I thought. It was good.
So you mentioned Chantel. I've got to say something similar to that for Ashley, because I talked about people call us, tell us what they think is wrong with us. And then we had people in here, and I let that whole thing slip right by me, because when they stood up and talked about domestic violence, I thought, that's just the end of the meeting. They don't have to talk about anything else. And thanks to the quick thinking of Ashley, she sat there and just watched me do it and came over and whispered, you gotta go back. So, thank you, Ashley.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have a point of privilege, please.
Yes, sir.
I got several comments at the Fun Fest activity, thanking the commissioners for the premium pay more than once.
Yes,
So I just
me
wanted
too.
to convey that to the group. And there's a young lady who has a birthday this Saturday. She turns 91. Happy birthday, Mama.
Who was that?
My mother.
Your mother, gosh knows. Congratulations to you. You're still good for you. Anybody else have any birthday wishes or any comments? Or Ted, are you speechless?
I got nothing.
You got a pink coat.
Pink coat. Do you want to repeat once again the reason for the purple? We see, I've got a purple thing on here.
I know.
You do too?
He's Breast Awareness Week, I got it. That's good.
domestic violence.
Domestic violence, there you go.
Domestic violence.
Wesley,
Resolution
from the
we did
Winston-Salem Journal, you have any questions? Might as well cover the territory. Hispanic month is when? Now? Oh, si, senor. ¿Cómo está? See, I speak Spanish too. Well, Ted has suggested we adjourn. I'll second that motion. We're adjourned.